I'm working on a new long-form Python tutorial. The goal is to get novice Pythonistas up and running quickly by showing Python used in context, as opposed to creating a list of the squares of the first 10 integers. This video is a teaser to show how quickly you can pick up Python and do something useful with it. I'm going to be using an application called PyCharm. This comes to us from the folks at JetBrains. You may have heard of JetBrains as the publisher of ReSharper, a very popular productivity plugin for Visual Studio on the .NET and Windows side. So you already know that PyCharm is going to be a quality product. Now ReSharper comes at a price, and so does PyCharm, at least if you use the Professional Edition. But JetBrains, seeing a need for an entry-level editor for Python, has created a Community Edition of PyCharm that is free. And I'll be using that in the course. But don't be fooled. In this case, using a free version of a commercial product is not just an advertisement. PyCharm Community offers the same powerful editor and visual debugger found in the Professional Edition. What you don't get are some of the bells and whistles for working with application frameworks like Django and Flask. And we won't need those for this course anyway. So go ahead and download and install PyCharm Community Edition. It works on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, so you can follow along no matter what OS you are using. And you don't have to use PyCharm. I just think it's easier for beginners to pick up. But if you already have a favorite editor such as Visual Studio Code, Atom, both of which have excellent Python support, or even Vim, you'll be able to follow along. But there are some extra steps you'll need to handle yourself. And now, on to Python. When you start PyCharm, you'll be presented with this splash screen. Before creating a new project, I just want to prove that there are no tricks up my sleeve. If I go down to Get Help and select About, you can see very clearly that I am using the Community Edition. And by the way, if you are using the Professional Edition, you'll have access to all the features of the Community Edition. There will just be some more options on the screen, and you can use either one. And I don't get paid by JetBrains for saying this. I really think they make a quality product. To create a new project, I'll select the Create New Project option on the splash screen. I'll accept the location as is, but append First Py as the name of the project. In the Project Interpreter section, I'm not going to change anything, but I do want to point out that I will be using Python 3, 3.6 to be exact. At the time of this recording, Python 3.7 is the current version, and that will work. I'm pretty sure the future versions will work as well. Also, versions of Python prior to 3.6 will work, especially more recent ones like 3.4 and 3.5. But the basics, which I'll be covering in this course, are not going to change a lot, if any, between the versions of Python 3. You might be wondering, what is a virtual environment? This is an advanced topic, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But a virtual environment is a sandbox. It is an isolated instance of a specific version of Python along with a set of installed Python packages. When you are learning, you will make mistakes. You will also need to experiment, which will result in more mistakes. Using a virtual environment allows you the freedom to make those mistakes without the risk of corrupting the main Python installation on your machine. This is because changes made to the active virtual environment affect only that virtual environment. So you could have an application running on Python 3.6 and you want to make sure it still works well on Python 3.7. Instead of upgrading to Python 3.7 and hoping for the best, you could create a virtual environment with Python 3.7 along with the packages the application depends on, and then install your Python 3.6 application to it. If everything works, great. You've only spent a limited amount of effort on a cheap insurance policy. If it blows up, you cash in that insurance policy, then destroy the offending virtual environment and start with a new one. But it doesn't affect the virtual environment that contains the working application. I'll cover virtual environments more in the full course, but for now, I'll just click the Create button. PyCharm will spend a few seconds creating the virtual environment, and I'll speed that up through the magic of video. This will only happen when the virtual environment is created, not every time the project is open. In the full course, I'll go over PyCharm features in more detail, but for right now, I'll right-click on the project folder, First Py, and select New, Python file. I'll call the file main. By convention, Python files have a .py extension, and PyCharm will add one for me. I'm going to follow tradition here and write Hello World as the first code to introduce you to Python. And here it is. Now you likely already know what this is going to do. It's going to display the string hello world somewhere, and we'll get to that in a minute. But first, take a look at the amount of code needed to accomplish this. It's just one line. There are no classes required, although Python does support them. There are no functions or methods, not even an entry point, although Python does support them. There are no libraries that have to be included, although such is supported by Python. In other words, Python subscribes to the theory of YAGNI, which stands for you ain't gonna need it. Python doesn't burden you with anything it doesn't need to run your application until it's actually required, so you can start small and build your way up. There are a number of ways to run this application. First, I could open the terminal in PyCharm. It will give me a command prompt. Now on macOS and Linux, you'll see a different prompt, however the commands I run will work the same. Also, the prompt is prefixed with venv, and this is the name of the virtual environment that is active. So we can only affect the virtual environment with the commands run in this prompt. To run the application, I'll invoke the Python interpreter and pass it the name of the file to run. Again, the result is predictable, but we've officially written our first Python program. Now another way to do this is from inside the IDE, and that is to right-click in the editor and select Run Main. This will open up the Run pane and execute the application inside of it, and we'll get the same result. When we selected Run Main, a configuration was created for us by PyCharm. Configurations let us create different conditions under which to run applications. It's an advanced topic that I won't dive into here, but note that the configuration created will do just enough to run the application. So in the future, all I need to do is click the Run button to start the application. Now we are not always going to want to say hello to the entire world, but perhaps be more specific. So I could create a variable called name and assign it who or what I want to say hello to. When declaring a variable in Python, it doesn't get any simpler than this. Just variable equals value. Since Python is dynamically typed, there's no need for a type specifier. Python knows that the value on the right-hand side is a string, so the variable on the left-hand side has type string. Also, strings in Python can be either double or single quoted. Most of the time you'll see single quotes. To greet Python, I can concatenate two strings using the addition operator and assign that to another variable, message. Then I can pass message to the print function. I'll click the Run button and see the results. There's another way to join strings in Python. I can put a pair of braces in the message where I want to insert the name. Then I'll call format on the string and pass it the name. Python will replace the braces with the value of name. And clicking Run will again show the result. I'll be using format most of the time. As I said before, Python does not require you to organize your code into functions or methods. However, as any experienced developer will tell you, it's hard to avoid their use completely. So let's make it easier to say hello to Python, or anyone else, by executing this code in a function. First, I'll declare a new method with the def keyword. Then comes the name of the method, greet in this case, followed by the inputs enclosed in parentheses. This function will take the name of who or what you want to greet. Then I'll put the code to create and display the greeting in the body of the function. Now notice something interesting about the syntax here, and this is something that is different from many other languages. First is the colon after the function signature. That tells Python to expect the body of the function on the next line. However, Python also requires that the body be indented. So unlike many other languages, where white space is insignificant, Python uses white space to denote scope. And Python is quite strict about this indentation. It must be consistent, so you can't indent 4 spaces in some places and 2 in others. It's bad style to do this anyway, but Python won't allow it at all. And you can't mix spaces and tabs. Now one advantage of using PyCharm is that it handles this indentation for you and makes sure that it is consistent. To call this function, I'll just use the name of the function and then pass a string for who or what I want to greet in parentheses. Now I can click the Run button again to see the results. We want our application to be even more friendly and say hello to more people, or languages in this case. To store more than one name, I can use a list in Python. A Python list is analogous to a JavaScript array. It is a linear collection of valid Python values. These values are separated by commas, and the entire list is surrounded by square brackets. I'll put several languages in a list called names. I can access the values in a list by index, again similar to a JavaScript array. But if I want to perform a task on all of the values, I'll need to iterate over them. And this is the job of a for loop in Python. Starting with the for keyword, I'll then declare a variable to hold the value from the list for the current iteration. Then the in keyword, and finally the source that I want to iterate over, which in this case is the list names. So this reads, for each name in the list of names, do something. And the something is the body of the for statement. Now just like with functions, the for statement terminates with a colon, and the next line is indented as the start of the body. The variable name that will hold the value for the current iteration of the list is in scope for the body of the for statement, and after the for statement finishes, the variable name will go out of scope. For now, I'll just print the value of each name. And once again, click the Run button for the results. There is one more thing I want to do here. Let's connect to a web service and show some data from it. There is a project called JSON Server, which is written in Node.js, but that doesn't matter because it runs a RESTful web service and returns JSON data that we can consume in Python. A public instance is running at jsonplaceholder.typicode.com. If I ask the server for the /posts endpoint, it will return a JSON array with 100 random objects. I can then transform these into Python objects and access them. There is support included out of the box for HTTP, the transport of web services, in the Python standard library, but it is kind of difficult to use. Instead, I'm going to install a third-party package using pip, the package installer that comes with Python. This package is called request and is referred to by the author as HTTP for humans. It makes calling web services and other HTTP tasks much simpler. To get requests inside of PyCharm, I could go to the Terminal tab and run pip install requests. However, I can also use the IDE. In the Settings dialog, which I can get to using Ctrl-Alt-S on Windows or Command-, on Mac OS, under the Project First Py Project Interpreter menu, all of the packages installed in the virtual environment for this project are shown. To add a new one, I'll click the plus button and then search for requests. I'll click the Install Package button, after which the requests package will be available for use inside of the virtual environment. Before I can use requests in my code, I need to import it. Then I can make a request to the URL for the JSON server. If the request is successful, the status code field will be 200. Here we see a conditional for the first time. These work much like for statements. After the if statement is a colon, and then the body is indented. The JSON data is automatically converted to a Python list, and I can get it through the JSON method. The post variable will hold a Python dictionary. A diction in Python is just a collection of key-value pairs, and I can access the values by passing the keys in square brackets. And now if I click the Run button, I'll see the results.